Tara, thank you so much for joining me today in the podcast. We've been friends for years, and it's so great to finally have you here on this platform. Welcome.
Yay, thanks for having me. I'm so excited to be here with you today.
Yes, I'm excited too. I almost feel like we're like sitting together on the couch, like cozy. It's, starting to be fall and,
Yes.
just having a really, really good, deep, and also fun conversation about motherhood, which I know for you, you talk about a lot, as do I. So let's just start off with something light
Yeah.
about what you love most about motherhood, or, what have you learned most about motherhood? And, the one thing that you just look back and say, I really like that about being a mom.
I That's a good question because it's a very loaded question, right? There's a lot
It
of things
is.
that sort of went into that. I love being a mom. I've been a mom now for 13 years, and I have to say it is my absolute favorite thing. I've always loved children. I've loved working with children. I have a very natural knack with kids to the point where actually my friends who are also moms will see me with children and they're like, "How do you do that?" And I'm like, "What do you mean?" They're like, "How do you connect with children the way you do?" And I was like, "Oh, I don't know. You just like you do." And they're like, "No, no. Like what you have with kids is special." I'm like, "Oh, well, thank you. I appreciate that." And although I only have one child, I love being with kids and I love children. So to answer your question, Kim, is that I think kids are so special and magical in how they're viewing the world, how they're learning every day, they're growing, they're new here, right? They haven't been people, humans, as long as we have. And so everything to them is novel. It's new. It's the first time they're seeing something. It's the first time they're doing something. And so as a mom, I think it's such a privilege for us to be able to experience that along with them because as they're experiencing something as a person for the first time, we're experiencing it as a parent for the first time. And so I think that's super special. And I think kids are an absolute joy.
I do too. You literally, you could have been talking, I could have been talking about what you were just talking about right now because I do. It's just such a joy. And I feel like I finally found my calling when I became a mom, right? I finally feel like I found what I was been looking for all these years. I just, not just in like career, like obviously I work with young children and I kind of feel the same way as you. I just seem to connect with them. And I think that's what I do so well, working with that 0 to 10 age range specifically, but doing play therapy, working with kids. I just adore them. And, I feel like when I became a mom, I finally felt complete or fulfilled for the first time in my life. No offense
Mm-hmm.
to my husband if he's listening, but he'll say, I'm the parentologist for a reason. I'm not the wifelogist. He jokes about that,
Right.
but it's true. It just finally like clicked, and it was like, oh yes, this is why I was meant to be on this earth, kind of feeling. So very fulfilling, and I feel the same way. And now that my kids are getting a little bit older, like yours, that's why I work with the little ones because A, it keeps me young, and B, it just helps me keep working with those young minds. And like you said, they're all just sponges and they're soaking it all up, and seeing things through their eyes is such a miracle. It's a really cool thing. So I'm glad we have that in common.
Yeah, yeah.
So
I love kids.
yeah, they are great. They are great. But sometimes motherhood can be difficult, right?
Oh, yeah, yeah, I'm not gonna
We both know
sugarcoat
that
it,
too.
right. We could both things are true, we could hold both truths, in our mind at the same time, is
Yes,
that
both can be true.
parenting is amazing, and at times it could be very difficult, for sure.
Yes. That's why I was like, let's start the show on a light note, and then boom, 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 motherhood's hard. Because it is.
Bring it right
It
back
is.
down.
And so we're going to talk today a little bit about, advice you have, advice I have on, how to cope through those hard times, and, how to find your village, and how to, do all the things that we need to do. Because I know for one, and I think you would agree with me, that motherhood can't be done alone,
Yeah.
and I'm not saying a partner or a spouse or another caregiver, even your external family, like in-laws and, family and cousins. I'm talking about other moms who really get what you're going through
Oh,
and
yeah.
can really relate. And that's one thing I love about your work and the content you share on social media and on your podcast and different things, because you help moms feel, I think, less alone. That you share relatable content that moms are like, oh yeah, I get that, and that's how I feel. Like like you're talking right to them, and that's kind of what I was hoping this episode would come to light. So recently, speaking of your content, you shared, and I think it's pinned on your Instagram page, but shared about top 10 things that modern moms are going through, like top 10 problems that modern moms have. And we're not going to go through all of them today, but if people who are listening want to go to that, I suggest that's where you start when you go to Tara's Instagram page specifically. But, what advice, I know one thing you mentioned was about the isolated mom, the lonely mom. What advice would you give to that mom if she's listening right now and she's feeling lonely, she's feeling isolated, wherever she is in her motherhood journey? What kind of advice would you give to her?
Yeah. I started my account because I was a lonely mom. I was living in New York City, which is a city of 8 million people. And I felt very alone when I had my son and when he was an infant. And so every day, mostly every day, we would get up and go in the stroller and go for a walk in Central Park. And I would go to the parks and I would try to like make friends and talk to other moms, or we would sign up for music classes. But in the city, it was tricky because most of those music classes were all nannies and me. And
Mhm.
so it was a little tricky to make other mom friends because the mom friends weren't necessarily there. But eventually, to fast forward, it's like I created my own village online because I was lacking that. I was looking for that myself. And so, what I often say to moms who are in a similar situation is get out of the house. Go for a walk around the block, go to the local parks, go to the library. I am a huge fan of libraries. Go to the library, sign up for toddler time, sign up for music classes, chat with other moms, chat with other nannies, chat with other babysitters, chat with all the people, because it's so important to take yourself out of your comfort zone of being at home in your warm, snuggly, house and in your pajamas, and then just like scrolling your phone, because like, that's so easy to do. It's much easier to stay in your pajamas and scroll your phone while the baby's sitting and playing on the floor. And it's not that I'm not saying like there's not a time and a place for that. Obviously there is, but it can't
Right.
be all the time every day. So, you know, get dressed, brush your hair, go out to toddler time at the library, and try to make some friends and chat with some other moms there who may get it.
And I think too, even if you don't make a friend the first day or the second day or the third day you go, you're still surrounded by like-minded moms.
Hmm.
Sometimes I feel like just being in the same room with them and just,
Oh, yeah.
having similar situations helps you feel less alone than if you were at home. Like I said, they're there. You may not be talking to them, they may not be your friend, you may not, it may take a while, but you're surrounded by them. And I think even just that alone is it's so fulfilling. It's so helpful in that situation.
It really is. Like when we went to Central Park each day and played at the playground, we were not making friends every day or best friends every day, but sometimes I would end up chatting with a mom. Sometimes we would exchange numbers. 9 times out of 10 we weren't. It was like that one friend that you would meet for the day and then never see again ever again.
Right, right.
And that happened a lot, but at least you're still getting up and having a conversation with somebody that isn't your partner. You're waiting for your partner to come home at the end of the day, and then you just like word vomit at them because you're so excited to see another human being. Because I definitely had those days. But the days where we got up and out, and when I say that, I'm sort of saying like forced myself to get up and out and get the baby dressed and get out of the house, made a really big difference. It's much harder in the winter because you don't want to have to like go out in the winter and deal with that, but it really makes a big difference to try to put yourself out there, try to put yourself out there to start a conversation with somebody, to smile. And sometimes I ask like, oh, how old's your baby? Mine's 6 months old. And then we would get talking about different things.
Yeah. And I even think too, I mean, I know we're talking about, newer moms that are, maybe with babies and toddlers and
Hmm.
things. And I do think the loneliness and the isolation does happen a lot more during that stage of motherhood. But I have noticed something just recently. I think you can relate to this too, because I think we both have middle school kids
I knew
that
you were going to ask. I was like, I hope she asks about middle school because I'm going to bring it full circle. Go
good.
ahead,
Thank you.
Cassandra.
We are on the same page and we didn't even know it. But I feel like I've had a little bit of that feeling again now that
Mm-hmm.
my daughter just started middle school this year because, when at the elementary level, I was volunteering at the school. I was very hands on. I was on the campus a lot. I knew all the friends. I knew all the other moms and parents.
Mm-hmm.
And then half of her class went to one middle school. The other half went to the middle school she's attending, but I'm not on campus ever. I don't know half the new kids she's coming home and telling me about. And I feel a little lost in all of that. I feel a little isolated. And then of course, when things come up about puberty and just the all new stages of life that they're dealing with that I thought I had it in the bag. And then all of a sudden she starts this new stage of life. And I'm like, I feel lost. So let's bring it full circle because I'm in that stage right now.
Yes.
I mean, tell me what to do. I mean, it's
You
hard.
and me both. No, you and me both, Kim. So it's interesting because I've been experiencing this myself, and I've been hearing about it a lot from other middle school parents. When your kids are in elementary school, like you said, you feel sort of like, king of the campus, if you will, right? Like, you know everybody, you know the other parents, you know the teachers, you know all of the things. And you get to middle school and it's sort of like a black box. When my son was in elementary school, I was the PTA president for 2 years. And we I say we because my co-president and I, like, we had the elementary school down. We knew everybody, we knew all the policies, all the different things, all the families. And then we used to joke that the middle school was a black box. We didn't understand the culture there, we didn't understand the policies, we didn't understand anything. And so then our kids go to the middle school, and obviously you're growing and you're learning the culture of different things, but parents don't volunteer like they used to. They don't have the opportunities to be in the classroom on campus, like you said, all those different things. It is vastly different. Middle school is vastly different from elementary school in that case. And a lot of the parents feel very set in their friend groups. So they're
Mhm.
not looking to make new friends. They're like, we've been friends with these girls for the last, 4 or 5 years from kindergarten. They're not looking to include new people. Not that they're being like a clique per se on purpose. I mean, maybe they are. I don't know. But everyone's very like settled in what they're doing. And everyone's like, well, we've been parents a long time now. At this point, you're 13, 14, been parents for 13, 14 years. Like, you're just like, you're sort of like in that mode where you're not looking to make new friends at the playground. Like I'm saying, like when you have a baby, you're looking for human connection. I think some of the middle school parents, I mean, maybe I'm mistaken. It seems like they're not looking for connection. I am, and I'm like, you're all by myself. Like, wait a second, because it's challenging because your children don't need you as much because you're not wiping butts. You are driving them to places and dropping them off at practice and stuff, but you're not
Yeah,
there.
like a block away so they don't see you because 'cause they're too embarrassed to have you near their school, right? So
Very,
you're really
very
isolated at
much
that
that.
point.
Yeah. So you're very much that. So it's like they don't want to be seen with you. They don't need you as much. Their parents aren't calling for the play dates. Many of the play dates are actually worked out and organized between the children themselves. So we don't have as many touch points with other parents or mom friends as we used to in the past. So that could be very lonely. So I totally understand. I have a friend who is very good about organizing game nights because she was in the same boat. We're all in the same boat. We're all just floating on these boats by ourselves. And she said, let's get together more often. So she was putting herself out there and making it a point to say, let's get together. Let's do a game night. Let's see each other. Because even for school pickup, we don't have buses in our town, so the parents have to pick up or the kids have to walk home. But in elementary school, all of the parents pick up,
Mhm.
and then in middle school, very few of the parents pick up. Or if they do, they're sitting in their cars and the children walk to the cars as opposed to the parents walking up to the school. It's a very different, like I said, the culture is different. Pickup is different. Drop off is different. And there's a lot less touch points. So you have to make an effort. Going back to what it was like when we had babies and toddlers, you really have to make an effort to make mom friends. The same thing is true with middle school.
Yeah, and it's true, and there was moms I saw last year in elementary school, literally probably almost every day, either at pickup or in the classroom or whatever the case may be, and now I haven't seen them in months. And it's just like we're all of a sudden just not friends anymore because our kids
Yes.
don't have classes together anymore, and my child barely sees their child at school anymore. And so they're making new friends. And it's kind of a feeling of loss a little bit, that
Yeah.
you had these friends and now you don't. And,
Yeah.
this is an episode for another time, but I only can imagine, 10 years from now when our kids are launching or we become empty nesters and how lonely that stage of motherhood might be. So we'll save that in a
We're
couple
gonna have to come
back
back for that one.
because
But
I,
it's interesting because here you are in California saying the same thing that I'm saying in New Jersey. So it's coast to coast. We are not alone here in this situation.
exactly, exactly. And I definitely agree. And so I think, talking about those ages and stages and, of motherhood, I think they definitely do change. So let's go to another one. You also talked about the mom who feels overstimulated, overwhelmed, exhausted. I mean, I know I've been there. Like and I get through it, you know. I mean, there's some days I'm not a proud parent. There's some days I just basically kind of hold up my white flag and say, I can't be a mom today. Like
Yeah.
I'm done. I'm tapped out, you know. But what advice would you give to that mom? Because I'm, you know, assuming that you can relate and that you've been there too more than once.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what mom doesn't relate to that? To being overwhelmed, overstimulated, any of those things. On those days where that happens, there's a few things. One, sometimes it's just nice to stare at a wall. On days where you are so overstimulated, let's say you're coming back from a birthday party, you're coming back from the trampoline park, whatever it is, like it's okay to excuse yourself for a few minutes and just decompress. You just sit in silence, you just stare. You just got to get your body down, get your nervous system down so until you feel good enough to start functioning again. So that's one thing. So don't be too shy to just ask to step away for a moment. Once everyone's home and safe and they're okay. Two is always ask for help if you're lucky enough to have a partner and you're lucky enough to have a partner who can step in and help you when you can. Absolutely do that. Don't suffer in silence
Mhm.
and don't suffer unnecessarily.
Yeah. I think sometimes my mental load, just thinking about all the things I have to do, put me in that state of mind. You know,
Oh yeah.
it's not even after I come home from something, it's been a busy day or you know, we're traveling or, you know, sometimes it doesn't even take that. Sometimes it's just my to-do list. And I think of all the things I need to be doing or should be doing that overwhelms me. And then it's like I haven't even started my day yet. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, you know, I'm not going to make it this week, you know, and that's
Yeah.
overwhelming just in itself, you know. And I know I've talked about mental load a lot on all, you know, all my platforms and including here. And it's a lot, you know, it's a lot. I feel like the modern mom these days definitely have a heavier mental load, and not to compare, but maybe to generations past. You know, I think just our world is just, and now with social media, an overstimulating place, which leads me
It
to my
is.
next question. And
Yeah.
one of the next problems you talked about is comparing ourselves and maybe even competition at some point, but comparing ourselves to the Pinterest mom or the Instagram mom who's sharing just her highlights, and we're feeling like we're not good enough. Are we doing enough? Are we being enough? Are our kids' birthday parties enough? Are we loving our kids enough? You know, don't do screen time. Make sure you're doing this and that. And it's just there's so much advice out there these days. And I try not to add to that noise, but I also want to share tips and help moms too. But I feel like we're just inundated with it. And then we start comparing ourselves, and that can be a very slippery slope. So your advice to that mom, I'd love
Yeah.
to dive in a little bit on that.
Of course. Well, one, you do it in a very constructive, positive way. So don't say that you're
Thank you.
that you're adding to the noise because you're absolutely not adding to the noise. On my podcast, I ask all of my guests at the end of the interview, what do you think is the biggest modern mom problem right now? And about 8 times out of 10, people say social media comparison. It is a major concern. It is very top of mind for people right now for all of the reasons that you mentioned. So I don't have to list through those because you just so eloquently listed all of them. And it's a major concern for so many things. It's a major concern for our physical being, our emotional being, our spiritual being, all of the different things. Are we parenting enough? Are we loving our kids enough? Are we thin enough? Is our kitchen white enough? Is our husband helping us enough? Like there're just so many different things out
So
there.
many.
So many different things that we are just bombarded with. The human brain was never designed to be able to process this much information, this many quick little decisions, this many dopamine hits, all of these things that we're constantly being fed through social media and through the algorithm. And it is really hard to parse through that and feel like you are enough and what you're doing is enough and that you are kind enough and smart enough and pretty enough and thin enough and healthy enough and all of the enoughs, right? Like you are enough, period. End of story. You are enough, period. And as someone who spends a lot of time on social media, because I do, I'd be lying to say that I don't spend time on social media. I absolutely do. It's what I do for a living. I like to keep my finger on the zeitgeist of what's going on in society. And being on social media obviously helps that. Helps and hurts that, I suppose.
I can relate to both of those.
Yeah. But I do. I like to sort of have, my finger on the pulse of what's going on with things. And in that, I am susceptible to it just as much as anybody else is. And when I start to feel that ick, when I start to feel less than, or I'm not confident in what I'm doing, or I'm not happy with what I am either putting out to the world or whatever habit, any of those things, right? When I start to feel like yucky about social media or anything like that, I put my phone down and I try so hard to be present and be grounded in what I'm doing. I put my phone down and I think, why do I feel like this? And I'm like, I know why I feel like this. I'm getting so many messages from social media right now and it isn't making me feel good. I put my phone away. I spend time with my son if he's around, meaning like not at school or something. I spend time with my husband if he's around. If not, I spend time with my cats. I look outside. I will literally go to the window and then just look outside and look at the trees and look at the sun and just feel the sunshine on my face, just so that I could feel present and grounded in where I am and not let all of those messages bombard me all the time because it is just so overwhelming. And as I said, the human brain was never designed to consume all of this.
Yeah, exactly. And, I think sometimes we believe those thoughts that, swirl around in our head and they're not necessarily facts. And, sometimes it feels real and it feels true and it's not. And I think just reminding ourselves, is this really true? No, it's absolutely not.
Mm-hmm.
And, those positive affirmations are just, sometimes my daughter wrote me a letter. I don't know. She's sweet. She writes letters to me all the time about what a great mom I am. And,
I
she's in the
love
stage where she
that.
still like thinks I'm like the best thing on earth, which is
I love
amazing. I love
that.
it. I'll take it.
Love it.
So sometimes I just save those and I put them in a little file, in my office or just somewhere in my bedroom. And sometimes I just go back and I just read those and, just kind of soak that in and, start believing those things. Like when I'm starting to feel bad about myself, I'll say, no, I mean, other people don't feel this way about me. My own children don't feel this way about me. And sometimes I just keep those little notes with me. And sometimes that alone, I think the fresh air and the sunlight, 100%. I advocate for that, or just moving your body, stretching, I'm an advocate for that for sure. But those little notes sometimes help. So, if your kids write you a little card or a little note just saying, I love you, mom, just even something just like that, can help. So, if you have a stash at home, keep it for those days that you do feel bad. It's helped me. It's helped me.
I
So,
love that.
yeah.
My son, he is very affectionate. He has never not once in my entire life written me a note that says, "I love you, mom." But he's not a big writer. So I mean, like physically writing something. Like he'll sit down at a computer and write 300 pages about stuff, but he's a big typer. He's not a big writer. But having said that, what he does, it makes my heart so happy. He will kiss me on my head, like just out of nowhere. Like we'll just be like, I don't know, hanging out or something. And like he'll lean over and just like kiss me on the top of my head. And I think that is just the sweetest thing.
Mhm.
So
So sweet.
yes. So on days where if I'm having a hard day or I'm feeling less than or I'm not as smart as somebody or funny as somebody or what any of those things that I go through in the course of a given week, I think about the times where he just like leans over to me and kisses me on my head because that at the end of the day, that's all that matters. Nothing else matters, not follower count, not algorithm, not brand deals, like none of that matters except for the fact that my son loves me enough to just very quietly and very subtly show hhis love. And that's all I need.
Absolutely. It's so validating, right? I almost can feel it just by you sharing that story of just that sweet moment where it's just validating of, oh, yes, I am enough. I'm a good mom. My son loves me, or my child
Mhm.
loves me. So that kind of segues into, the last one I wanted to just focus on before we move on is talking about anxiety and depression. Because I know you mentioned, I think the 10th one you mentioned in that reel specifically is anxiety and depression. Of course, as a licensed mental health therapist, that one stood out to me of, with blaring red lights of, yes, how do we prevent ourselves from getting to that point? And I think we've been talking about this, and we can maybe share a little more. I think movement, fresh air, stretching, affirmations, ways to validate ourselves, help that. But I wanted to just dive a little bit deeper into that of mentally, how do we possibly be proactive in trying to prevent ourselves from getting that deep, if we can. I know sometimes obviously it's, biological, we might need a little more outside assistance for that. But just on those days that we're just feeling really, really bad about ourselves, we're really anxious about something, What coping skills have you used in addition to what you've already shared, to try to help at least keep yourself afloat, where you're not feeling like you're drowning and your head's still above water, and you feel like, okay, I just need to get through this till tomorrow, and then once tomorrow and the sun comes up, I'll be in a better place. Just even just that little bit, just a little bit better than I was yesterday. What have you found that you've done in the past to cope when you're getting to that point where you're feeling pretty bad about yourself?
Yeah, when I'm really struggling in those times, I reach out to a friend to say hello and let her know that I'm thinking of her. Because when I take that energy to let someone else know, "Hi, I'm thinking about you, just wanted to say hi." Usually, she will write back. Sometimes I have friends that don't write back, and then I'm always like, "Oh, come on.
I knew.
What
You
are
need
you
new
doing?"
friends. No.
Yeah, exactly. I do. I'm gonna start texting you, Kim, because
Yeah, please do.
then I know you'll respond. So
Yes.
I reach out just saying like, "Hey, thinking about you, just wanted to say hi." And then usually she'll write back and say, "Hey, that's awesome. Thanks so much. I appreciate it." And then we'll start a conversation, whether it's text messages or whether it's actually a phone call. I think we in this current society underestimate the importance of friendship. And I know that's true because loneliness is an epidemic, right? Like the American general, US Surgeon General came out saying that loneliness is an epidemic. We need to, as I said very in the beginning of this conversation, reach out to our friends, put ourselves out there. People need people. People need a village. So when I am home and when I am spiraling with self-doubt or anxiety or any of those things that I go through in the course of a given week, I will reach out to a friend because I almost immediately feel some of that weight being offloaded off my shoulders. Obviously on a day where I'm like really struggling too, I will talk to my husband and confide in him. If I'm really struggling, I could talk to a therapist. I mean, there are so many different things. Obviously, moving your body. I'm really big into Pilates. So Pilates always really helps me too. But my tried and true sigh, almost like a collective sigh, is when I reach out to a friend and then she reaches back out to me. People often say to me, like, Tara, you are the ultimate hype girl. Like you're always hyping up other people's accomplishments. You're always, there rooting for people. And I say, yeah, I am because it's literally my favorite thing to do. It brings me so much joy to root for others and to see other people succeed and to hype them up. To me, that's like mental health therapy in and of itself, because it's not that it's like a toxic positivity, because it's not. It's like if you wrote a book, I'm going to champion that book. If Rachel writes a book, I'm going to champion Rachel's book because it brings me so much joy to see people succeed and to see people do well. And so that's just something that, and then it gets me out of my own head, right? Like when you're trying to champion other people, it sort of gets you out of your own head and out of that own old deep ways of thinking, or that deep thinking that people sometimes can get into.
Exactly. And I agree. I think the two biggest things that always stand out to me is, like you said, reaching out to a friend, or just that sense of belonging. And even if it's someone you're reaching out online, like let's say they see some of your content or they see some of my content and they write a comment under one of our posts. And then we were like, it's just connecting in some way to some other
Mm-hmm.
human being. And obviously a neighbor, someone through, let's say, your church, or, a group that you're a part of, or, whatever the case may be, obviously a good friend, a mom at school, whatever, whoever that person is, having a few on speed dial, on your phone.
Yeah.
But just, yeah, that sense of community is huge. And then, the other one I would say, as you mentioned it earlier too, is asking for help. When I'm feeling inundated and just feel like I can't go on, like I just want to go to sleep. Like I can't even go on the rest of the day. Like I can't, like even yesterday, I turned to my husband and I said, I know we kind of take turns. And I said, I know tonight's kind of my night to make dinner. And I was actually gone all weekend on a girls trip, which was great. Very good for my soul. But I
Awesome.
came back to just a million things on my to-do list, and
Yeah.
I had laundry to do, kids PE clothes for the Monday morning, and some things I had to get done yesterday. And I just knew I didn't have enough time in the day to do it. And I just felt so overwhelmed. And I just said, I know it's my night to make dinner, but can you just do that for me? Because I can't do it. And I used to be so hard for me to ask for help, even to my own
Yeah.
husband. But
Yes, I
when I
totally
do it,
understand.
right,
Mhm.
it like just that just one thing took it off my plate and onto his. And I had such a sense of relief, like, okay, now I can do it. Like now I can finish all the chores and things I have for the rest of the day so I can start Monday off fresh. So
Mhm.
sometimes it just takes one thing. So, we have huge mental loads, we have huge to-do lists, but if you could just take one thing off, what could you delegate? What could you ask someone for help for? I think just starting there and not looking at the as a, all as a whole, because that is overwhelming, but looking at it, individually and saying, okay, what's the one thing I maybe can put off till tomorrow or ask for help for? I think is something that's helped me a lot too. So,
Me too. That is a huge thing. You don't have to ask for the moon. You could literally just ask for one thing. Help me go grocery shopping. Help me cook dinner this evening. Actually, you're going to laugh. I was doing laundry and then I guess I must have forgotten it there for a few days and I never do that, but for some reason I did and then I went this morning. I was like this is so gross. Now I have to watch them all over again.
yes.
So as soon as we're done our conversation, I have to go redo our laundry from several days ago. And I'll tell you what happened. Usually my husband will carry the laundry from the basement like up to our bedroom and I didn't ask him the other day and I should have and I didn't. And now all the stuff is mildewy and I have to do it. I have to wash it all
I've
over
been
again.
there. Well, good. See, sometimes it takes talking to another mom to remind you, oh, shoot, I still have that chore I didn't finish. So
Yeah,
you're welcome.
that's
Yes,
what it
I've
is.
been there.
It definitely takes a village.
Yes, it does. And sometimes if I don't respond to a text or to something in the moment, I will forget. So sometimes it's like
Yeah.
just making sure I do that. So I totally get that. You move on to the next thing and you're done. Do you I know we prefaced it a little bit earlier in what we were talking about, in regards to being a toddler mom versus a middle school mom,
Mm.
and there's lots of stages in between, of course, and even stages beyond. But how do you feel the problems or of the modern mom evolve or change over that time span? Like how
Mm.
I mean, it's funny because I feel like moms always ask me, like, what do you think's harder, being the mom of a tween or being the mom of a toddler? And they're obviously very different. But how do you feel like just in our current society, like how that changes, or any advice that you might give to any additional advice you'd give to a postpartum mom versus a more seasoned mom, because it does change. But anything specific that we haven't mentioned that you would talk about, and just the seasons of motherhood. And I feel like for me, and I'll preface it this way, and if you want to add to it, is,
Sure.
seasons change. No
Mhm.
season is there forever. And it even just one day might be hard and the next day might be easier. And one season might be hard, but then knowing you can come out of it, and there's new seasons ahead, I guess. That's kind of what I was thinking about. And if you wanted to add to that, but I definitely think that's just a good thing to remember as a mom, that you're never stuck in the same place for long, and that there's
Mhm.
hope there, I guess. I don't know.
No, no, there is.
I'll let
I
you
think
take
that's
over from there, because that's about where I want to, segue into your thoughts.
yeah. No, that's beautifully said, Kim, because that is absolutely true. All of motherhood are seasons, right? Seasons of your life. And for parents who are in survival mode, when you have infants and toddlers, it is really hard. It can be really hard to enjoy parenthood because you are in survival mode. Once you graduate from survival mode or move into an area where you're no longer in survival mode, parenting can be much more enjoyable. And I know that has been the case for us, and I've seen it with many other families as well, whether that happens to be more of like a middle childhood into the teen years. Survival mode, it's tough. It is hard. And so many times when people are talking about struggling parents, oftentimes that's what they're speaking about. They're talking about like, I'm not sleeping, I'm not eating, my baby's not eating, my baby's not sleeping, I don't know what to do, my brain is on fire, all of those things. And you have a lot less of that when your kid is 9, 10, 11 years old. Right. You're not that I'm saying that that's easy mode. It's or easy street. Like it's not, but it is much easier when you're sleeping through the night, you're eating properly, all of those different things. So for me, I would definitely say middle childhood is easier than toddlers, but that's just my experience because we really struggled with toddlerhood, just because my son had like really big tantrums, a lot of tantrums, and so he has evened out from an emotional regulation standpoint. So that's much, much better. But that's not the case with everyone because I have other friends and I know other parents who were like, oh no, toddlerhood was super easy. Now tweens is really hard, you know? So it is not a one size fits all by any stretch of the imagination. But the only thing we can do is just take a deep breath.
Yeah.
And just know that it will pass. Whatever stage you were in, good, bad, or indifferent, it's going to not be there forever.
Exactly. Well, which leads me into my last, I guess, question is something that I admire about your content that you share on your social handles and platforms is about humor. And, sometimes relatable humor is what helps get us through some of those dark moments or dark seasons, even of knowing we're not alone, knowing that other moms are experiencing what we're experiencing, and finding humor in some of it. And you do such a, I guess, wonderful job being delicate about not making fun of things, but being like relatable humor so a mom really doesn't feel as alone. And I just admire that about your content. I really do. And so just as we end here, just I'm not a funny person. Like I try to be, and I think I am at times, but I'm not. I
I
read what
think you
you
are.
wrote and I'm like, oh, that was good. How come I didn't think of that? And I'm like, well, of course I'm not really that funny. But I mean, has humor really helped you? And how do you think humor can help moms? I think sometimes we just take ourselves too serious. We take motherhood too seriously because we're trying so hard to be the best mom, and
Mm.
sometimes it's like we try so hard we can't see the humor in a child who poops through their they have a blowout and they
Yeah,
poop through their whole.
it's
You know what I
it's
mean? Like
really
it's
hard to
funny,
find
but
humor in those times. Actually, a long time ago, years ago, when I first started my account, I made a joke about the word blowout. About like I was joking about like wishing that like how the meaning of the word blowout changes, like blowing, getting your hair blown out at the salon versus a blowout that is tracing like going up the
all
back
over
of
your
your
car.
child's onesie. Yeah, absolutely. Totally, two totally different things.
But in the moment, that could be devastating. Like, I think one time it happened to me and
Oh.
I was in tears because we were on the way to daycare. I didn't have a second pair of clothes and I thought my life is over and I got to go to work and I have a big meeting this morning and it can be really hard. But then later, you can laugh about it and say, yeah, that was, really funny. But finding that humor in those moments, I think you do really well. And I'm not as good
Thank you.
about that. So just
Oh,
I would love to hear
I
your thoughts on that to expand on.
oh, thank you, Kim. I really I appreciate that so much because I've been doing this now for 10 years. We collectively have
Yeah,
been
both
doing this
10
on
years.
Instagram for 10 years now. And so one, Instagram has changed so much
Oh,
in
yeah.
10 years. It's just mind-blowing to think about how it has evolved. But I'd like to think that I've always found humor in different. When I was a little kid, I used to get in trouble in school and I couldn't help but laugh. That was just like a nervous reaction. So I would always laugh when I would get in trouble. And even still, my mom would yell at me and I would laugh. And I was like, that's not the right. And then I would get in trouble for laughing. And I was like, but I can't help
Right.
it. It's a nervous thing. It's a nervous tick. So I guess I've always found humor in different things, but I like to think sometimes that I mean, not that I'm making this blue, but it's sort of like gallows humor sometimes. It's like when you're really in the throes of it with the onesie poop all the way up the back in the car and you have the meeting, like sometimes you just need to laugh at different things. But ultimately, I'd like to think that I create content that I needed to hear or I needed to see at that moment. And so not that I'm saying like, oh, I'm just doing it for myself, but if I was like an avatar and it was like Tara the avatar, I want to make her laugh. I want to make her feel seen. I want to make her feel accepted because I'm creating content and posting content that I want moms to nod along and say, yeah, she gets me. And we get each other, and that's all that I ever really hoped for, and that's all I ever really wanted. And so, although my content has sort of like evolved from one way to the other in the course of 10 years, because when I got started, it was all humor based and only humor. And then in the course of 10 years, it has evolved to talk about maternal mental health and pregnancy loss and so many different things. And I'm grateful for that evolution because humor is sort of limiting by itself. But at the same time, it's what really resonates with people for the most part. So I'm grateful to be able to do both and have those conversations, the heavier conversations, but then also make people laugh. And the other thing too is that I never like to make jokes on the backs of other people. That's one thing that not many, some content creators will make jokes on the back of other people. I don't like to do that. I've never really liked to do that. I don't like to pit people against each other necessarily. So I've always been a fan of talking about a topic, but not necessarily a mom per se.
Right. Well, you do a great job at it. So,
Oh,
I'm going
thanks.
to put your Instagram handle and every way that people can reach out to you and
Appreciate it.
follow along because if you're not following Tara now, like you need to be. I'm not just saying that she's my friend and I love
Thank
her,
you.
but you really do. Like she just has really great content. So if you're a mom, like you really need to be following her. So we'll make sure we put
Oh,
that in
thank
there. And
you.
again, thank you so much for just
Thank
talking with
you.
me today about motherhood and the good, the bad, the ugly, and just how to cope through it and how to get through it, and the village and everything. And just I appreciate your advice and your experience that you shared today.
Oh, thanks, Kim. I appreciate you so much.
Thank you.